Child sexual exploitation is one of the most horrific cases of child labour. The issue gets very little attention. Now, the UKZN School of Law and the Dutch organisation Terre de Homes are hosting several webinars to highlight the plight of the victims. To tell us more, we're joined from Durban by Rowena Bernard, who is the lecturer at the university. Rowena, thank you so much for your time this evening. Of course, the placing of this webinar is key because it takes place on the sidelines of the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labour, which thankfully has been getting quite a bit of attention, at least here in South Africa. Tell me why, however, you feel that these webinars are needed to highlight the impact of the exclusion of sexual exploitation of children in the discussion around child labour on the international platform. Why is it excluded from those discussions up until now?
Good evening, Marcelle, and to all our viewers. Firstly, thank you for affording us this opportunity in which to speak about such a pertinent and important issue in our society. The discussions around the sexual exploitation of children has not been on the international agenda for a while now. There have been discussions and there's been conventions formulated and drafted by the International Labour Organization, which regulates and accepts and acknowledges the fact and the existence of the sexual exploitation of children. But unfortunately, it's not high on the agenda. Focus is more primarily on child labor itself and the issues of ensuring that children are not engaging in work that's harmful to their health and their safety, to their moral as well as their physical and emotional development. So these webinars were designed as an unofficial side event to this international child labor conference that was held here in Durban this week. And the purpose was to highlight the impact of the exclusion of the sexual exploitation of children in child labor discussions at an international level. So because of the fact that there has been this limited discussion, these webinars were designed to promote not only information sharing, but also it included child youth advocates from India, Kenya, and the Philippines, who have in fact been affected by sexual exploitation as children. And because of their experiences and the trauma of sexual exploitation, either directly or indirectly, they were able to impart that knowledge to many of our participants today. So the aim was to ensure engagement of our relevant stakeholders and to facilitate ongoing dialogues in order to map a way forward with regards to this particular issue.
Now, Rowena, you're an admitted attorney and a lecturer with an expertise in child law and labour law. In your experience, how serious is the issue of sexual exploitation of children as child labour in South Africa?
Okay. Thank you, Marcelle. So South Africa, like our international and regional countries, is not immune to the sexual exploitation of children. Here in South Africa, we find that traffickers recruit victims from poor countries as well as from the rural areas, and particularly in the Gauteng province, where children are exploited in terms of sex trafficking, and in local urban centers like Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, and even in the Bloemfontein areas. We have trafficking rings that exploit girls up to the age of or as young as 10 years who are involved in sex trafficking. We also have many cultural practices such as ukutwala, which is commonly known as child marriages, where girls as young as 14 years are forced into marriages And this is commonly occurring in states like, cities in Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and even here in KwaZulu-Natal. These girls are forced into marriages. They are exposed to violent sexual experiences, and they even forced into labor by their husbands. So child labor, and in particular sexual exploitation of children in South Africa is very common, and it is very rife. And also in terms of trafficking, South Africa, along with many of our regional countries, are also transit countries for child trafficking. Whether it's within our country itself, or whether it's in terms of cross-border crossings, we find that children are terribly exploited in terms of their sexual experiences.
From a movement of young bodies point of view, you spent quite a bit of time focusing, and we do this all the time, the trafficking aspect of it, the movement of underage people between major cities and places that are known as transport nodes, and of course then cross-border as well. But what element has the role of the internet and social media, what element has it added to this massive battle that people like yourself has? Because that really is almost an entire new world that's being created, where the grooming begins before the physical trafficking actually happens. That must be a massive challenge to try and police as well.
Yes, and that's some of the serious problems that we're having, is that the internet is a developing area because it's easily accessible, so it's easy to lure victims into returning or coming into the urban areas, where they are then forced or transported or moved or recruited into different sectors where they are engaging in sexual exploitation. The internet trafficking or sexual exploitation is a developing area. It is very common, and it's very difficult to regulate, especially in our this type of society where we're living in, where our children are exposed to modern devices and are involving in sextating, where they're sending pornographic pictures of themselves. And then we have what we call revenge pornography arising, where when teenagers or youngsters of today break up with their partners, those photographs that are dispensed or circulated between themselves are then circulated in a public forum, which impacts on the emotional well-being of the child, and sometimes it even leads to suicidal attempts. I mean, we know a couple of years ago of one child being assaulted by another school child, and the video went viral, which led to the child committing suicide. So there's a lot of, it's not just about the sexual impact of it, it's also the emotional trauma that's associated with this. And that's the problem that we're having, is that there's a lot of contributing factors that is making this not just the focus in terms of luring from a poor or disadvantaged community or a home, but in terms of the modern technology. So sexual exploitation of children is becoming a serious issue, or is a serious issue, which is becoming worse and without proper regulations and control.
And I suppose it doesn't make it easier when we keep hearing that we don't have enough social workers in the country as well. Just very quickly, before I let you go, because I know that's part and parcel about what your department does. And within your department, you also have the Navi Pillay Research Group and the Children Rights Research Interest Group. And it seems to be quite an important focus area in your law department. How important is that in terms of equipping lawyers, social workers, and other types of professionals that you then send out into the world to help police and, more importantly, care and help children and families who are at risk of sexual exploitation and then, as a result, falling into child labor?
That's a very interesting question, and it's linked very closely with our master's degree that we offer, which is the LLM in childcare and protection, and we also offer an MPhil degree as well, both of which feed into development of our candidates and our students in this particular area. It's a fabulous program which focuses on international law, regional law, as well as South African law, on pertinent and key issues that relate to children, such as the ones that we are highlighting this evening. We work very closely with government and non-governmental organizations, wherein we invite skilled and specialized advocates into the program, where they train our students, they sensitize our students on these particular issues. And what's important with this qualification is that it's an interdisciplinary program, wherein it's not just focusing on law, it focuses on policy, it focuses on social work, and bringing in the changes that we so desperately need when it comes to children. And the type of people that, or students that we include, are not just lawyers, but they come from the social welfare departments, they come from education, they come from human resources. So it's very diverse in terms of the audience that we are targeting. So
and I suppose I suppose that's exactly what's needed, a multidisciplinary approach to a battle that really is getting away from many of those in law enforcement right now. We thank you for your time and your insight this evening. That's Rowena Bernard joining us from Durban. She is a law lecturer at UKZN School of Law.